Hi everyone, I'm Glenna Stewart from the Division of Continuing Education, and today we're going to have a really valuable conversation about what to do when faced with an obstacle or a setback on your journey to completing your academic goals. And my guest today has an inspiring story of working through adversity as she tries to achieve her academic ambitions. Lisa Tenario, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Connor.
So I'd like to start by just asking if you could talk a little bit about your background and how you came to CU Boulder.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Arvada, Colorado. Went to Arvada West, was an A+ student all through high school. Just really enjoyed like mathematics and science classes. So I knew when trying to decide what I wanted to do for college that I wanted to go someplace that was emphasizing on math and science.
Okay.
I applied to CU Boulder. I was super excited because my brother had gone there the year previous. So I was excited to join him on his journey through his education. And So I chose CU Boulder, and I got accepted into the engineering college right away, so I was able to start on my path of engineering, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with engineering yet.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing is my freshman year, I actually watched a CU Boulder video, a different CU Boulder video that talked about a mechanical engineer student who went on to work for Disney as an Imagineer, and it just blew my mind. I didn't even know that that was an option. And so I was so excited when I heard about that I was like, okay, that is my end goal. That is what I want to do.
Okay.
I want to work on roller coasters. I want to build rides. That sounds amazing. And so I started heading there with my journey.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about, your experience starting in the mechanical engineering major, what that experience was like for you in your coursework?
Right. So I started out just like any normal student. Obviously, there weren't a lot of women in my degree, so it was a little rough in the beginning trying to make friends. Freshman year was particularly rough. I became very depressed my freshman year just because I was living in a double, but I didn't have a roommate the entire year. I didn't know anybody except for one other person on campus. So this was like the first time living away from my parents for an extended period of time, which was extremely stressful. And I wasn't doing as academically well as I had hoped to be doing. So like I was obviously an A+ student at A West, but then I came to college and started getting C's and D's and lower on tests. And it was really challenging trying to still keep up with coursework while trying to balance life with that. And I was also working at that point. So there's a lot going on.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that experience is pretty normal for a lot of students coming in. It's kind of a rough transition from high school into college life where you're on your own and you're balancing an entirely new environment.
Yeah.
So you talked about, noticing that your grades were dipping. And I know from talking to you that part of your journey has been academic difficulty. So can you describe how you felt when you first kind of encountered this challenge of academic difficulty?
Yeah. So the first speed bump, I guess, in my academic career that I faced was actually at the end of my sophomore year. So obviously I was still depressed going into my sophomore year, but I had so many other things put on my plate. I had become a residential advisor in the residence halls. I was working probably 25 to 35 hours a week. I had a full course load, bigger than I've ever had in the first 2 semesters. And I was just trying to take on so much work that I wasn't able to keep my grades up academically. And at that point, at the end of my sophomore year, I got put on academic suspension, which for the viewers that don't know what that is, it's you're not allowed to take main campus courses anymore, but there are other options for you to take classes, so obviously through continuing ed, or you can take summer courses are still allowed, but you're not allowed during the semester to take any main campus courses.
Yeah, well, it's probably important to unpack that a little bit. So, you were in the engineering school, and your classification was suspension. But it's important for the audience to know that there's sort of a catch-all phrase for lots of different categories of academic difficulty on campus. And depending on your student status and your school and college, the criteria that are used to evaluate your particular designation will differ. As Lisa said, for the purpose of today's conversation, academic difficulty means that your GPA has dipped below a certain threshold, and you have to take particular steps to get back into good academic standing. And depending on your situation, there are different pathways that you can take, including continuing ed courses. But it's important to know that if you are put in some kind of status of academic difficulty, it is not a punitive thing. Mm-hmm. It's a warning that somehow you need to change how you're approaching your coursework. And so for anybody watching today who feels like they are on the cusp of academic difficulty or are in academic difficulty, we strongly recommend that you reach out to your academic advisor, who will have the most up-to-date information for your particular situation and options for you to move forward in your academic career. So true. So Lisa, getting back to your experience with this, can you describe how it felt when you found out that you were on suspension?
Honestly, I felt really defeated. When you get put on academic suspension, specifically through the College of Engineering, mm-hmm. You just get an email from the dean that's kind of cold and not necessarily cutthroat, but very disheartening, to say the least. It's very much it pretty much just says, hey, you're not allowed to take main campus courses anymore. These are some other options that you possibly have. But first reading through that email, I felt so defeated. Like, I had come this far. I had worked so hard to get into college, and I got into college, and now I'm not doing so well. Mm-hmm. And it was challenging to try to cope with that and try to understand, well, there are other extraneous circumstances that contribute to this, but ultimately, end of the day, your academics is most important. And so in that, I just, I felt lost. I felt like I didn't know where to go, and nobody was there to help me initially. So
what questions did you have? You got the email. What questions did you have? How did you discover options?
Obviously my questions were, what were my options? I wasn't sure if I wasn't able to take any sort of classes at all, because I thought main campus was all sort of coursework, so not including online or self-paced, which I didn't even know was an option at the time. At that point, I actually had waited a semester and then went and talked to the dean about, what are my options? What can I do to get back into the College of Engineering? And she said, continuing ed is one way to get your GPA up so we can accept you back into the college. Okay.
So what did you do from that point when you found out that CE was an option for you?
As soon as I found out CE was an option, I came straight here and I talked to an advisor. Okay. And they were very helpful in just kind of recommending courses that would work for not only meeting requirements for my degree, but things that I was actually interested in doing, so that I wasn't just taking a busy coursework.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, can you? For students who may be completely unfamiliar with continuing ed and the course options that are available, can you explain the process that you went through, with your advisor or after talking to a CE advisor to get yourself back on track?
Yeah, so it was pretty much, I came here and I talked to Grant, who is a wonderful advisor. And the process was pretty much, I sat down and had a conversation with Grant about where I'm at academically with my degree. and the kind of stuff that I'm interested in. And there is an entire list of courses that I could have possibly taken. And there's like two different options. There's either like online or self-paced courses. And so the self-paced course option is you have 6 months, but you don't have any deadlines or due dates or anything. So you just try to get everything done within that 6-month period. And I have a funny anecdote a little bit later about that. And then online courses, you do have set days and deadlines, but you're able to take it anywhere that you want. So, and I have another funny anecdote about that in just a little bit. And so, yeah, so after I met with Grant and we talked about what courses that I would like, initially signed up for a Shakespeare course. And that was exceedingly fun. It was something different than math and science, and it was something that I was always been interested in. And so I was able to take that course and still raise my GPA because of that.
Okay.
And then after that, I set out and made a plan for myself to make sure that I was still meeting my academic goals. So like obviously this class counted towards one of my requirements, but then I needed to sit down and plan out what other courses can I take to make sure that I get back into school.
Okay. Well, I mean, so you sort of dove in.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, in your experience in continuing education classes, what have you learned about the experience of being at CE that you don't think other people would know if they haven't taken a CE course before?
I think in taking like classes through CE, you learn a lot about how you learn and the best way to learn. When I first got into CE, I didn't think I was going to be very good at like online classes or self-paced because I don't have a lot of self-control. And so I initially took a self-paced thinking like, okay, I'm going to keep a strict schedule. I'm going to have this out in my planner. I'm going to make sure that I follow it every week. But when you don't have another teacher on the other side kind of holding you accountable, it's a little bit different. But that actually helps me now that I'm taking some main campus courses, because what it allows me to do is self-pace myself so that I'm not leaving my homework for the night before, so that I know how to schedule out my time better and not just procrastinate all the time. Or like online courses was really nice because it was really flexible, because I learned that I can work in certain environments but not other environments. And where I studied best at and where I could do homework best at were two things that I really learned about myself.
Yeah. So. Well, you know, I talk to a lot of students here at continuing education, and a common theme is that they sign up for online classes thinking that they're going to be easier. And so I'm curious to know what your experience has been. Does that actually hold water for you?
Easier is not the word that I would use to describe online courses for sure. They're the same level of difficulty as like any normal course. It's just you have a little bit more flexibility on when and where you do like your homework. So for instance, I took a class called Tragedy and Inspiration, which was an online music course. And it was really fun, really interesting, fascinating. The coursework was a lot, but it was worth the amount of time and effort that I put into it. And I believe, like, this is kind of where one of my funny anecdotes comes in. When I was taking this course, we had moved at the time, and we didn't have the internet set up at my house.
Okay.
And so I was kind of unable to do my online course because of that. And so what ended up happening is after work every day, I would pick up my brother and we'd both drive over to Jack in the Box, and I would use the Jack in the Box free Wi-Fi because they're open 24 hours a day. And so I was able to do my coursework at like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and still be able to get it done without having Wi-Fi.
That is dedication. I mean, so I'd like to talk a little bit more. Maybe you can describe in more detail your process for studying, for mapping out your coursework too, because I mean you've got this end goal in mind, right? You're trying to get back onto main campus so you can continue to take engineering classes. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it initially started with, particularly for mechanical engineering, you're kind of given a chart of classes that you need to take in order to meet your requirements.
Okay.
And some of them are really lenient, so they're just like humanities and social sciences, and so they're not dedicated to like a specific class you have to take. So in that, I looked through that list and figured out what I had already taken and what I still needed to take, and the classes that I needed to take before other certain classes like prerequisites or co-requisites, so that I was able to plan out what the rest of my years here at CU are going to look like. And from that list, I found out that I could take a couple more continuing ed courses in order to fill some of the requirements that I was missing. And I knew that was just going to work better for me in that regard. And then with that, I had other people kind of hold me accountable. So like, obviously I talked to Grant, who was really helpful in trying to find courses. And then I talked to my actual advisor also, and she said, well, I think this is also going to help you with your best course of action. Like, these two classes are really challenging, maybe don't take them together, and stuff like that.
Okay, so it sounds like part of your process too was building a community of people around you that could support you and guide you. So can you talk a little bit about how you gathered those people or how you found them?
Yes.
Because I think that's probably really important component to your ongoing success.
Yeah. So like I said previously, I came to see you. I was obviously alone. I had my best friend who was the only person I knew on campus. She lived in the res hall next to mine. So she wasn't too far away, and we hung out a little bit, but it was challenging because it's the first year of college. We're trying to figure out our own schedules and live our own lives. But what I ended up doing is I was able to build a community of people that I knew from going to like office hours, who were taking the same classes that I was, and just finding the people that I really resonated with. So like, obviously people that could help me out, like Grant or my advisor, but also just people in my general life that could help me. So like, I have a very loving boyfriend who's been very supportive through my entire education process. Also, my parents weren't very supportive initially when I go into college. They're like, I want you to go to college, but after you get into college, you're on your own. So I was able to, so like, they are still in my life, obviously, because they're my family, but they're not necessarily as big as a support system as they were when I was in high school. And I was able to make friends and meet people that were on the same track or going on a different journey than I was, but were still able to take like similar classes. And so I was able to build like this big support group of people that helped me through my education.
Okay. Well, this is a live event, so we have some questions coming in from audience members. So Ted Rockwell is asking, what advice would you have for people who are preparing to take an online course who have never taken one before?
I would say the best advice that I have is to keep a calendar with all your due dates for your online course. The biggest challenge that I kept running into specifically is that sometimes the due dates were on different days of the week, whereas if you're taking main campus courses, they're due like the same day every week, but that's not necessarily true for online courses. So keep a planner with like all of the projects that are due, all of the homeworks that are due, as well as just making sure that you're keeping tabs on yourself when where you're at in the semester, like for the online courses. So for instance, like if you're halfway through the semester, you want to make sure that you've retained half the knowledge that you've been learning. You just haven't been like zipping through the videos and not learning anything on your journey through an online course.
Okay, well, I know from thank you for sharing that. It's actually a very common tip that we get from students. But I'm wondering, you and I have talked before today's conversation, and I know that this has been an ongoing journey of taking classes to raise your GPA so that you can get back on main campus. And I imagine there are times throughout the process where it's been discouraging, frustrating, and I'm wondering, what I love about your story is that you are eternally optimistic. And I'm wondering, how do you stay motivated to keep going, when I think it could be really easy to say, yep, I'm going to cut my losses and change majors or stop this path.
Yeah. Part of it is just having a really good support group that is there for you and kind of knows what your goals and dreams are and wants to keep you going with your goals and dreams specifically. And then another part of that is you got to find something that you love to do. If you get into college and you start doing a degree that you're not in love with, then you're not going to want to keep doing it for the next 4 years or however many years. For me, it's going to be 7 at this point. But just having that fiery passion for, this is my end goal, this is what I want to do. So on the points when I get super frustrated or I feel really discouraged, I just know that this is where I want to be at. This is my end goal, and so I'm going to make it no matter what. This is just a small speed bump in the many speed bumps that I've had. You can get over this hurdle. So it's just kind of like a nice little self-motivating, like keep your main goal in mind.
Okay. Well, given your unique experience, what do you understand about education that you think your peers, others might not know because they haven't been, through the things that you've been through?
I think that a lot of my peers probably don't know that there are other options in regards to education. A lot of people think, okay, well, I'm on academic suspension. There's nothing else I can do. I'm kicked out of school. And so a lot of people just drop out because of that. And I feel like there's always another option. Like I knew when I got on academic suspension that there was something else, like I wanted to keep going with my education, but I wasn't sure, is this where I want to keep going? Is this something that I still want to do with my life? Do I still want to keep going to college and paying all of this tuition to go to school? And part of that, I think, like people lose sight in college of like their end goal of like, I'm going to college because I want to be here in my life.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really common for people to come into college with sort of a cookie cutter vision of what it means to go to school. And you have shared with us before that this experience has taught you that everybody has their own educational path. So can you talk a little bit more about that? And how others might benefit from knowing that?
Yeah. So like you were saying, everybody thinks that there's this cookie cutter shape, like, okay, yeah, I'm given this chart of classes I need to take, so I'm just going to follow this path straight and narrow. And that's not everybody's educational journey necessarily. And so realizing that everybody's journey is different, you become a little bit more empathetic towards other people in regards to like, yeah, it's going to take me a little bit longer, but I'm still going to end up getting the education that I want. And I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
So, I think we're kind of wrapping up the conversation,
Right.
but I want to know what's next for you. Like, the fall semester is just around the corner. What's coming next?
Yeah. So for me specifically, in the fall, I'm actually taking, I'm dual enrolled in here at CU and at Red Rocks Community College.
Okay.
So in the fall, I'm going to be taking classes through Red Rocks while taking a continuing ed course. And then by that time, I'm going to be accepted back into the College of Engineering in the springtime. At least that is the hope.
Okay.
And I'm going to continue on with my education, just doing part-time classes from now until I graduate. And then obviously I want to become a Disney Imagineer, so I'm going to keep working towards that goal.
Okay. We've got one more question from an audience member that I want to make sure we get in before we close. So Emily would like to know, what should people know about continuing ed's programs that they might not already know?
They might not already know that continuing ed is for anybody and everybody. A lot of people think that continuing ed are just for people on academic suspension or probation, or that they can't take it with their main campus courses, and all of that is completely false. You can take continuing ed courses anytime, and I honestly recommend it because it is really helpful, especially taking like a self-paced course with a couple of main campus courses really helps balance out your workload so you're not overly stressed during the semester. So.
Yeah, well, and especially for you because you have been balancing full-time work with the course load. So I imagine self-paced classes, online classes help you balance your schedule of working and staying on track academically. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your story. And thank you, everybody who tuned into this conversation. Continuing education is here to help. So if you have questions or you feel like you need some support, please visit our website at ce.colorado.edu or stop by the building like Lisa did and talk to an academic advisor or an enrollment services specialist. We're here to answer your questions and help you. So thanks again for tuning in.